If I were to compare Riot's multiple games to social settings, I'd say that TFT is a centenarian book club, League of Legends is a paintball fight where everyone shoots way closer than is safe because they're petty, and Valorant is a brony convention. Just a bunch of sweaty 30-something-year-old dudes that care way too much about a property meant for a wildly different audience. Legends of Runeterra, on the other hand, is for nerds like myself that get beat up in the high school gym lockers. But the absolute best thing about it is that admission to the game is kind of open to anyone that even remotely enjoys card games. With all the grassroots tournaments, the ranked ladder, and in-game seasonal championships, there's plenty of room to be competitive, and I honestly wish that there was more. All that being competitive really comes down to as well is knowing the ins and outs of your deck and how it performs against other archetypes. And heck, to prove my point, I went from Iron, the lowest rank in the game, to Diamond, the second highest rank in the game, in just one season. Not because I spammed the absolute best decks in the game, but because I knew how the game played around the one that I was playing. And the nice thing about being able to climb as effectively as I did was that it showed me how even playing suboptimally could garner results. The other benefit of playing Legends of Runeterra competitively is that you can do it by yourself. There's no need to gather a team or a group of 5 people to then consistently coordinate on a massive effort like how you do in League of Legends or Rainbow Six or any other team-based competitive game. I am competitive by nature, so my viewpoint on this is definitely skewed, but the way I see it, that means that the game is still accessible to a casual audience. I know somebody who wants to play Soraka decks because that's what they main in League of Legends. I know another person who will throw together the worst decks known to mankind and win because it's funny. And finally, I got the 3D animator Chibi into playing the game after showing off a Caitlyn Teemo deck, because as a Frenchman, it must have been satisfying for him seeing someone else surrender for once. Aside from direct ties to League of Legends, though, there are 2 main reasons why I see the game as easily accessible. First off is the game's visual clarity and simplified but modern design. Every unit card has the same design template. This is the amount of damage they do, this is how much damage they can take. Any common effects that cards share are then condensed into simplified icons, and any specific effects that a card takes is usually written out in plain text. Having a simplified and clean appearance doesn't mean that the game is without impressive visuals though, as every card, aside from spell cards, features full HD art. Every follower, champion, and landmark card has fully expandable, detailed art that you can realistically use as a desktop background. I mean, if you want to use Ribbon's Christmas Hams as your PC monitor desktop, then you can go right ahead, I guess, you horny bastard. I can explain. Secondly, Legends of Runeterra is free to play, a term which has unfortunately been marred, and especially by the mobile gaming market. Hey kid, do you want your Clash of Clans upgrade to not last half a dynasty? Well, all you have to do is drop your mortgage payment and we'll guarantee that you'll have at least 30 more seconds of fun. Cards in Legends of Runeterra are purchasable, but it's not like the game is unplayable if the newest cards aren't bought immediately. And similarly, if the new cards are what a player is after, then there are multiple other ways outside of purchasing them to acquire them. But for the sake of simplicity, these ways to gain cards boils down to they can be collected in droves by simply playing the game. The only lock to any sort of card accessibility is the time that has to go into collecting them, and even then there's no real disadvantage to having less cards, only limited options. Riot Games hands out a modest collection of cards and decks for free when you first start, so while they aren't optimized and contain cards that nobody runs, it is still possible to garner strings of positive results with them. If I'm to make another analogy to League of Legends, even if you're playing one of the first 40 champions released with the game, you can still win against newly released champions. The older champion is simply less complex. Unlike League of Legends though, unlocking new playstyles doesn't take several weeks worth of grinding. In fact, with the way that collecting cards is handled, it's entirely possible to unlock all of the cards needed for most of the decks in about a month or 2 without spending a cent. Inherently, this leads back to one of my earlier praises for the game, how it's accessible to both casual and competitive audiences. Casually, you can do whatever the hell you want, and competitively, it's not hard or expensive to keep up. And finally, the question that nobody asks but has constant complaints about in other titles, how good is the community? From my personal experience, it is the best community for a game that I've ever been involved in. Granted, my standards are low, given that I've shared my time with Overwatch and League of Legends players in the Rainbow Six Siege Discord where everyone asks for teammates with plus 1.0 KD ratios and then never show the fuck up. I'd specifically like to call out the people running and within the Mastering Runeterra community, as well as those in the weird unnamed offshoot community created by Nicky Boy and myself. The level of support that I have personally received combined with the often civil agreements and disagreements is remarkable. There's a part of me that believes that the general accessibility and solo nature of the gameplay has led to a severe decline in gatekeeping mentalities that you see in other games. Really, the biggest complaints about the game come from people insisting that certain cards or mechanics are overpowered or inconsistent, but almost never about other players. The general willingness among most players to improve or understand the game further also cements the idea that there are no stupid questions. I've personally never seen anyone get ridiculed even the most basic of inquiries. If nothing else, I know that I would gladly stay in the Legends of Runeterra community because of how easygoing it is. So there you have it. Legends of Runeterra is a beautifully crafted card game that boasts an impressively low bar to entry. As an added bonus, the player base is incredibly welcoming and insightful. That all being said though, it's partially surprising to me that Legends of Runeterra has relatively low viewership across the board on both YouTube and Twitch. But then again, I think it kind of isn't, and I have a few theories as to why this is the case. No matter how easy anyone makes it, card games will always possess a high bar to entry due to how information dense they are. Hello, Kai from the future here, kicking myself for not proofreading my scripts, but when I said low bar to entry, I meant in a financial sense, and when I say high bar to entry here, I mean in the knowledge sense. Okay, thank you. Immediately, the player has to know what regions are, what keywords do, the difference between unit and spell mana, and so forth. Anyone looking to learn the game might find a stream daunting, to put it simply. I also think that Legends of Runeterra is avoided due to its associations. Some people might see the game for its direct links to League of Legends and thus will try to steer clear of the paintball fight, while League of Legends players often refuse to play or watch content on anything else. Risk of Rain to good? 400 views. League of Legends bad. Oh yeah, 800,000 views and a standing ovation from former President Barack Obama. From what else I can tell, LOR has a relatively old, more mature audience than a lot of other games I know. I've seen several people in these larger communities openly state that Legends of Runeterra is the game that they'll play in between taking care of their families, arguably also meaning that they don't have the time to watch Twitch streams. We also have to consider that Legends of Runeterra is extremely late to the party. Heck, one of the more recent major collectible card games to come out was Hearthstone, which, despite Activision Blizzard being more openly revolting than Riot Games, it still pulls a larger audience on average because of its already established history, and by extension, more time to build the player base. Lastly, creating unique content for YouTube and sometimes Twitch, though to a lesser extent, is pretty tough to do with a game format as rigid as a card game. Not to say that there isn't good content out there, but rather that niches for lore are difficult to find. I'll point to League of Legends once again and say that the game has some depth to the types of content that it provides. From Ankle Spankin's buttery smooth commentary, to Sunnysplosion's friend group centric highlights, to Hypersugar's explosive montages, it's safe to say that League of Legends YouTube has options while Legends of Runeterra is still discovering what those options may be. For now, there's a plethora of talented commentators all making deck guide gameplay videos, though I can't say that I've seen much on LOR beyond that. I'm not trying to be negative here, I'm simply pointing out systemic limitations and using it to hypothesize why the greatest card game of the last decade doesn't get the recognition that I believe it deserves. And yet again, we could point back to the 2 points that I've made about the seemingly older audience combined with how the game has barely learned to walk and admit to ourselves that these things take time to develop. Not every game is going to be an overnight sensation, especially when it comes to card games. Given what we already have though, and given my limited opinions on its closest competitors, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Legends of Runeterra outpaces them to become the most popular game in its genre. And that's why it's Riot's best game. I'm cutting that, that's fucking lame. That's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about the game or want to see more Legends of Runeterra content on this channel, like maybe a serious beginner's guide, express those thoughts in the comments below. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a convention to attend.